Have you ever thought to yourself that it would be a good idea to pull out your perfectly good ZF 5-speed transmission from your BMW just to throw in a 6-speed from an E36 M3 that is arguably questionable that you bought off of eBay and you have no idea whether or not it's good? Well, I thought it'd be a good idea, and that's what we're going to do today. And you guys are going to see all of it happen. Because in today's video, right now, this E36 M3 has the 5-speed transmission in it that came stock. And by the end of the video, you're gonna see the 6-speed from an E46 in that car, along with the new clutch and flywheel, and a bunch of other while you're in there stuff too. Now, you may be asking yourself the same question that I ask myself sometimes along this entire process of why I'd want to pull out an 81,000 mile great 5-speed transmission out of this M3. That ZF 5-speed, by the way, is becoming more and more popular for all kinds of swaps because it's a great transmission. Well, there's two main reasons why you'd want to swap it out for a 6-speed from an E46 M3. One of those is the fact that the E46 M3 transmission is known to hold quite a bit more power than the 5-speed. Not that the 5-speed's weak, but the 6-speed can hold more. The other reason is, reason number two, is that it basically has an overdrive gear. Gears 1 through 5 are essentially the same as the 5-speed, but you've got a 6th gear as an overdrive so that when I'm doing 85 miles an hour on the freeway, I'm not at 4,000 RPMs. But there's one important thing that I want to mention. I have never swapped a transmission before. I've never even pulled the transmission. I've never done a clutch or a flywheel. I've never done a rear main seal. Today, in this video, you're going to see me doing pretty much everything for the first time. What that means is I hope that you all have the confidence, if you've never done this stuff before either, to do it. You can do it yourself. And if you don't want to do it yourself, I also have the confidence in you that you can make the money that you need to pay someone to do it. You know, pretty much everything's possible as long as you believe in it. That's the biggest thing. And if you have the confidence to go for it, you can do it. I have got to say, this swap has been a long time coming. I am very excited to finally get this thing completed. And if you guys are excited too, let me know by giving me a thumbs up. Here we go. Some of this stuff is stuff that you don't actually need, just while you're in there kind of stuff, and that can get out of hand pretty quick, let me tell you. But the big parts that you see here are things that you definitely do need to do this swap. Along with this E46 M3 transmission, you're gonna need an E46 flywheel and clutch, and that's what you see here from spec. To hold this transmission in, you're gonna need the transmission cross member or whatever you wanna call this thing. It's different than the one for the 5-speed, so you need it. I also got some new polyurethane bushings to hold the transmission in and give me some nice feel. With that, we have the clutch, what is this called? A selector rod joint. This piece actually goes onto the selector rod right here. It's got a bushing in here that's known to go bad. It's just a good idea to replace this. Along with that, getting a new pin to hold that in place is a good idea. This stuff, when you replace it, is gonna get rid of a lot of the slop that you might have in your transmission. If you put it into gear and it slops around a little bit and you've done all like a shifter linkage rebuild, that stuff right there is probably the reason why you still have slop. So change it out. This pivot pin is a stainless steel one, and it's just more reliable than the plastic ones that come in these transmissions to begin with. Along with that, there is also this arm spring, this pivot arm spring that goes with that pin. There's already one in there, but I'm gonna replace it. I also am replacing this clutch lever here. I probably didn't need to do that, but again, while you're in there, good thing to do. And another while you're in there thing, and the last thing I'm gonna go over today is just a new rear main seal. This one that I got comes with this whole new piece so that you actually don't have to install the seal. It's already in there. You just take this piece off, put in the new gasket, and then stick this sucker in, you're good to go. I would say if you're gonna do the work yourself and you're gonna do this all today, you should plan about 5,000 bucks. 5 to 6K for a transmission swap on an E36 may sound like a lot, and I don't know, maybe it is, but I do know that a lot of you guys are freaking wheelers and dealers, and if you find like a 6-speed from a ZHP or something from a junkyard and you pull it yourself and you get a cheaper clutch, you could probably squeeze in a 6-speed swap for like 2 grand or something. So, over the next week or so, I'm gonna be tackling each one of those pieces one by one. I'm gonna bring you guys along with it. I think it's time now to take out the old transmission, and I'll do some comparisons to show you guys the size difference. You're looking at my shifter right now. This shifter is from RTD. It's a chassis mounted shifter. Definitely get one of those. I highly recommend them. They're so great for feel. This is a shorter length because obviously the transmission is longer. You're gonna need a different rod like this. So if you get their shifter, pick up the rod to go along with it and you should be good to go. But under here, With the drive shaft out and with the exhaust out, you can see we are now looking at the transmission and my awesome headers that I love the sound of. So right here, there's gonna be a bunch of those little Torx bits, or Torx bolts that are all around the transmission. We have to take off a bunch of those, then I should be able to pull the transmission out with this cross member off as well. And just like that, the freaking transmission is out. You know what? This was not that bad to pull out. I've heard a ton of horror stories about the bell housing bolts getting stuck and breaking off and how to drill them out and how hard it was to reach them. It honestly was not that bad. And maybe it's because the clutch has been replaced before, and maybe because the car doesn't have that many miles on it, it really was not that bad to pull out. And the pilot bearing freaking came out with my finger. That was easy. Probably shouldn't be that easy to take out. Look at this flywheel. That surface is torched. No wonder the clutch was slipping. This is a SOX clutch and a pressure plate. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's almost worn to the rivets. There's not any life left in this thing. It was time to replace it. We are unfortunately gonna be adding a little bit of weight. It's not a ton. That ZF 5-speed's about 77 pounds if I'm right, and the 6-speed Getrag's about 105 pounds. So a bit more, but it's gonna be worth it, trust me. You guys, we are so close to being able to put the new flywheel, clutch, and transmission back in. All I have to do is replace this rear main seal. It's seeping a little bit, not leaking a ton, but you know, while you're in there, put in the new pilot bearing, and then we are good to go. All that took was just a little bead of Toyota Fit Pig along the bottom to seal it along the edge of the oil pan, toss it on with some new hardware, and you're looking at it bright and shiny and new. With that beautiful blue spec pressure plate, clutch, and flywheel in, everything on the engine side is now ready to accept the transmission, but not everything on the transmission side is ready to be put onto the engine. You remember a lot of that while you're in there stuff I showed you? It's time we tackle some of that, but it's gonna be worth it. By the time everything is put onto this transmission that I'm about to do, there is not going to be any way possible for this transmission to shift and have better feel than this is going to have. From here, it's basically just all the small stuff that you do every time you do a clutch job. Greasing things up just the way they need to be. We have the new clutch release fork, the new shiny pilot bearing from Spec, and then once this slave cylinder goes in, everything will be ready to put into the car. As for the drive shaft, that's another tricky part of the swap. You can see I've got two drive shafts here. I ended up using this one on the top, which is an automatic M3 drive shaft. It has a shorter front half than the longer one you can see on the bottom, which is from my 5-speed, my stock one. We need it to be a little bit shorter because the 6-speed's longer. Now be warned, I ended up calling like 10 drive shaft shops. Nobody wants to service BMW drive shafts because they're not really supposed to be serviceable, but luckily I found one that was able to balance this one for me so it could be in perfect condition. You know when everything's going so well that you know something just has to go wrong, it can't be this easy? Well, it did, and it's kind of a big deal. Well, it's actually not that big of a deal, but it is kind of a big deal at the same time. When I bought the transmission that I bought, the seller said that he had replaced all of the seals. All the detents are new obviously because they had to be machined into the bell housing so they would fit, so I didn't really worry about it, but it did cross my mind a couple times that I probably should just do it, but guess what? I didn't. And so of course, when you don't replace a part that's so easy to do and so cheap, it causes a freaking major problem. Because as soon as I started this thing up and it started to warm up and that input shaft started spinning, some freaking huge puddles started to appear below the car. And it smelled pretty strong of transmission fluid, which I didn't think was a good sign. There's a few different places that could actually be leaking, and I just was crossing my fingers hoping, please don't be the input shaft, because guess what? To put this little $40 seal in there, the transmission has to come out. You can't access it with it still in the car. You know, it is kind of funny that I did all that while you're in there stuff I kept talking about, and the one thing that I didn't do was the thing that screwed me. So you guys get to hang out and laugh at my mistakes while I pull this transmission a second time and then put it right back in. Now, I know a lot of you guys probably have a lot of questions now that we got this 6-speed in here to decide whether or not it's worth it, to see what kind of differences there are, and don't worry, we're gonna talk about all that. Check it. Oh yeah. Well, now we get to begin the task of a 500-mile break-in for this clutch, which I honestly should be looking forward to a lot, but I'm really not, because if you guys have been a subscriber to the channel for a while, you'll know that pretty much every time I drive this car, I'm either rolling gears as fast as I can, having a ton of fun, doing burnouts, drifting, or something, and now I can't do that for 500 miles. And that may not sound like very much, but for me, 500 miles is like 6 months of normal driving, so I'm definitely not gonna take 6 months to do it this time. And what seems like it probably was just a short time for you was a little bit longer for me, because after thinking about it for a while, I was so excited with getting the transmission in and doing all this stuff for the first time and having good success that when the leak happened, it really just kind of got me bogged down. I didn't want to do it a second time. I also had to move out of my shop because they raised my freaking rent by 40%, actually over 40%. So I gave them the middle finger, said I was moving out, and now I'm just in my shop for now. I mean, my garage at my house. So because I had to move out pretty quick, I had like 3 days left, I just let a local shop that I've had do work on my car before pull the transmission back out and replace the seal, and look at what this freaking thing looked like. At first I suspected that it wasn't new and that it just was an old one that was all dried and cracked or something, but it was a new one. They did replace it, and after doing things like machining the bell housing and doing a much harder stuff, I'm surprised that they messed up on replacing this seal and didn't even notice it, or maybe they did notice it and just said screw it. Either way, it screwed me with a lot of time, and it did screw me with some money, and it definitely made this experience not as good as it could have been, but oh well, here we are and we're driving. All right, I'm in first right now, here we go. Second. Third. Fourth. Fifth. And we're about to go into sixth, here we go. Sixth. All right. First of all, this 420G shifts so smooth. I'm not gonna talk too much on the freeway because it's really loud with some wind noise and something's whistling. I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out. But I wanna grab the GoPro and I'm gonna show you guys the miles per hour and RPMs between 5th and 6th gear. So here's what you can expect with the RPMs dropping when you have a 6th gear. Here's 6th gear, 80 miles an hour. We're right at 3,000 RPMs. Before I swapped it, here's where we'd be. At 80, about 3,600 or so, and a lot of times we're doing 90 here because the speed limit is 80, so I can go quite a bit faster than this, and at 90 I'm over 4,000 RPMs. It's so much nicer to be able to drop it into 6th. You wouldn't think that 500 or 600 RPMs makes that big of a difference, but when you're driving for hours, it does. And it just gives it much more relaxing of a feel when you can bust that sucker into 6th. But I have to talk to you guys about something that some of you noticed in my Instagram post, and that is I do not have the RTD chassis mounted shifter anymore. I got rid of it. I loved it with the 5-speed, but for some reason, as nice as this 6-speed is, I did not like the way that it felt shifting with that chassis mounted shifter. So I got rid of it. I ended up going with a Dyna short throw and just refreshed the entire thing. Every bushing, every connection to the shifter is all brand new, and it feels great. I really like the Dyna shifter. It's just so much more comfortable and more quiet with this car, and it just gives it much more relaxed feel while still being really, really direct and having a much shorter throw than stock, and I really like it. And if you're looking for really direct shifts, then you're not gonna do better than the chassis mount, and the RTD one is really good quality. Dang, dude, that was the quickest. Sheesh, dude. But I just kept thinking, I want to quiet this thing down a little bit. I want to have a little softer of feel when I'm driving it, just make it a bit more comfortable while still being sporty. And I think I've really nailed it with this Dyna short throw. I wish I could do like a freaking drift or a burnout for you guys, because it's just killing me again not being able to do that. Whoa, jeez, still getting used to this clutch breaking it in. But if you're thinking about doing the 6-speed and you think that the cost is worth it for you, you're gonna be happy with how it turns out. I like it a lot. If you decided to go with like a ZHP trans or something, maybe you can get into a little bit cheaper, but there's a lot of little things here and there, like the drive shaft, for instance, that just really adds up that cost. But if you've got that kind of money sitting around and you want to put that into your E36, this is a great option to do. And honestly, I'd do it again now that I have it all in here. I'd definitely do it again. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this for a long time. I'm so happy that I could finally bring it to you and get this stage of my E36 build done with. And I'm so happy with it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, because you guys will be seeing me again soon.